My name is Ksenya Kiebuzinski. I welcome you to our today's webinar on the cultural front, Ukrainian publishers in the time of war, sponsored by the Petro Jacyk program for the study of Ukraine at the Center for European, Russian, and Eurasian Studies, Monk School of Global Affairs, as well as the University of Toronto Libraries, which is where I work as a Slavic Resources Coordinator and head of the Petro Jacyk Central and East European Resource Center, in addition to my work as co-director of the program at CERES. Um, we are very grateful to our three presenters today. We have, in no particular order, Halyna Lystvak, who is a lecturer, literary editor, and independent publishing professional who researches and publishes on the history of publishing, readership, and book history. She has a particular interest in the artistic aspects of book production, such as illustrations and book design. We also have Yulia Kozlovets, who is the coordinator of the festival of the Book Arsenal Festival held in Kiev. It's a very well-known festival that's been going on for over 10 years and includes writers, poets, philosophers, publishers, illustrators, and she will speak to the activities before the war and what currently in March, what transpired and the work that she does with international outreach. And then we have Iryna Baturevych, who is co-founder of Chytomo Media Project, which is the largest independent media um, covering publishing and contemporary literary and cultural processes in Ukraine. And before that, she was deputy director and head of the analytical department of the Ukrainian Book Institute. Iryna does work on compiling and publishing Ukrainian and reading and publishing data. So she will be up on everything that's happening right now. She is a consultant, an author, coordinator. So we're going to get a lot of insight on where things were and where things are now in terms of Ukrainian publishing. I just wanted, in a personal kind of aside, say that I have been working as a librarian for 30 years, and the most dearest part of my work is building Ukrainian collections, and I've had the privilege to build Ukrainian collections at Harvard and University of Toronto. And whether it's in terms of buying new material, serial subscriptions, but also accepting gift collections. So seeing what was published in the past after World War II in terms of refugees who were in Europe and the flourishing of publishing then, or the early immigrants to Canada who, when they came here, established their own publishing firms, or, for example, at Harvard, the Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute and its active publishing program. So publishing in Ukraine has many aspects to it. It's not just territorial, but and now with technology and ebooks and open access, maybe there are opportunities, but also maybe things that we should be aware of to slow down. So I'm going to start our conversation perhaps from a historical perspective and invite all three of our speakers to kind of maybe guide us through what Ukrainian publishing looked like in Ukraine in 1991. What was especially like the vernacular language publishing in Ukrainian versus Russian or any of the other languages that are spoken in Ukraine? What did it look like before the pandemic. So let's say February, March of 2020, and perhaps just leading up to February of 2022. So I turn it over. Perhaps, Iryna, you would like to start us off.
Thank you so much. Hello to everyone, and I'm really happy to participate in this event and to make Ukrainian publishing maybe a bit more visible. Yes, as you have mentioned, maybe we should start from 1991 when Ukrainian publishing houses started to be, let's say, independent. So they stopped to be state publishers, and it means literally that censorship stopped somehow, and they became the market players, and the market wasn't developed at that time so much. It was really a big challenge for all Ukrainian entrepreneurs and for publishers in particular to run their own business and to start this cultural work as a business. So, but anyway, they had a really big experience in publishing because we had such big publishing houses, Veselka, for instance. Many Ukrainian publishers started to come back from exile, like Smoloskyp, for instance. Of course, we know about many Ukrainian publishing houses that grew, the publishing professionals that grew on the base of Soviet big publishing houses like Veselka, for instance, Ababa Halamaha, established by Ivan Malkovich. He was working in Veselka before. So all of these publishing experience accumulated during the years of being, let's say, Soviet, under the Soviet power. They lead Ukrainian publishers to the new reality of a market that was at that time divided into Ukrainian-speaking audience and Russian-speaking audience. It was quite important to understand that many Ukrainian publishers did really big efforts to bring back Ukrainian literature, Ukrainian culture, to develop this side in Ukrainian language, of course. At the same time, the big demand for Russian language book was still there. Over the years, it had been changed. I will speak about it maybe later. But at the same time, we need to understand that the infrastructure, the distribution system was totally ruined because it was based on propaganda, and that's why it was so well developed in Soviet Union. So to share the information, to spread information, spread propaganda in this in this sense. But it was lost, and to rebuild this distribution system, it was a really big job, really big piece of work that we were doing. And unfortunately, this process had been stopped firstly by pandemic, then by war, but it's still something that we need to do. So maybe other panelists wanted to introduce this period more. I will pass the word to Halyna or Yulia.
Yes, thank you. And hello to everyone. Like Iryna mentioned, yeah, we started the new country and the new industry, Ukrainian independent industry had to develop. And looking at it from personal point of view, I was studying on a specialty publishing and editing, and it was in the middle of 2000s. And I remember our professors telling us, you know, you are going to be the elite of society, because editors and publishing people of the book have to be building up the culture. But we cannot promise you anything because the industry is failing. So you are the people who have to do something about it. So I think the most prominent change started in the middle of 2010s, like 2014, when Russia attacked us after the Revolution of Dignity and occupied Crimea, and it was a tremendous change for everything, really, but also for publishing, because we realized that we need to fight for Ukrainian content, and we need to create more books and more values put into those books that would show who we are. And it's an interesting thing. I actually can quote Iryna's article when she said, looking at the market at 2014, and she said it was a quantitative decrease, but qualitative increase. So maybe we were not so active in publishing many new titles, but there were really good quality books. And this is from, I think, from 2014, we started developing more quality design-wise and content-wise. And of course, until the beginning of pandemic, it was only increasing. But then we had new things to challenge. During pandemic, many publishing houses also stopped their activity or transformed into electronic format. And I think a big kickoff for Ukrainian publishing was so-called COVID-1000, which was the help 1,000 that people could get for getting vaccinated. And you could use it for different things, but the most popular thing was buying books. And some publishers report that their income tripled during the first month of this program, which started in December 2020. So that was really good support for publishers who really needed that. Maybe.
Yulia, what is your perspective from kind of your work with international partners and any changes in the festivals outreach, and so if you could comment.
Yeah, I just want to comment first from the perspective that 30 years or 31 years of developing publishing is like not so much from the perspective of the world publishing industry, but from the point of view of the life of a human being. It's quite a big period of time, and it means that during these 30 years really not only companies were growing, people were growing. And if we will see on the professional level and the professional part of the publishing industry in Ukraine, the experts are relatively young. A lot of people were growing together with the companies. They were educating together with their publishing houses, and it means that the development was really extensive. The speed was really high. There were a lot of problems. We were facing a lot of challenges, but to tell the truth, if we will look on the current situation of Ukrainian publishing industry and the results of it, it's really like good world level in a lot of genres, in a lot of niches, in a lot of design matters, and so on and so on. So I mean that when you're developing something, started not from the 0 point, but from the point of the experience of which the world publishing industry has. So you have this profit, yeah, you have this bonus already to study the experience of other players, the study experience of other countries, and to go ahead. So it means that we were doing our best with a lot of challenges, but we were doing our best. And the last 3 years, two COVID years, and this year with the war, with the full-scale invasion, I mean, they are ruining what we were doing before. And if we will understand that, we will take the perspective that the war in Ukraine lasts since 2014, affecting a lot of people, a lot of businesses, affecting the companies who are, who were located in the near regions with the occupied territories, with the who were located in that regions. So we will understand that the influence of these, of these events were really ruining the industry. But in any case, even, especially during these years since 2014, as Halyna said, it was the tremendous positive development in a lot of directions of our industry. If we will see on the from the perspective of the book fairs and the festivals in Ukraine, so before from the very beginning in the 19th, there were events which were more markets than festivals or fair, even professional fairs. There were places where people can buy books and where publishers can sell books, because the distributive system was totally damaged after the independence. So there were almost the only possible way, points where people can, buyers and sellers can meet. But developing the industry, the fair part and the festival part was also developing. And first, Lviv Book Forum was really the big event having the influence on the development of the industry, on the roots of the development of the industry, giving very big impulse to the positive development, to the building of the new relationships between the book industry professionals and so on and so on. And actually the International Book Arsenal Festival, which I'm representing, which is 12 years now, 12 years old now. The appearance of this festival gave like the new level of the development of the fairs and festivals in Ukraine, and we were starting to play a sufficient role with our specific format, which we are doing, like doing not exactly the fair, not only the professional event, but the festival, allowing the people to meet together with the book professionals in the very nice atmosphere of the old arsenal where we are held in the festival. So it means that like the totally new level of the literary event and the literary festivals. So in few last years before COVID, there was very significant trend in this area, that we had the trend of appearance of small local festivals in different places in Ukraine. And it was really very nice, trend, because all these festivals had their own face and their own concepts. There were festival of translators, or festivals of poetry and music, or festivals dedicated to the nonfiction mostly, and so on and so on. And they were held in these not so big cities. I mean, it was not obviously, the very, very big cities with a million of inhabitants. It was developing very much the local network of the festivals, events, book people who were traveling, who were, going from one festival to another festival. The festival were studying one from another, so on and so on. So it was the developing of culture of the new festival movement in the literary sphere. It was very nice, but now, of course, it's stopped, and first COVID also influenced it a lot. And now it's, totally impossible to speak about the festival in real, but the teams are working and the people are still active. And we have another dimension, but we feel our role and feel our significance for the processes for now.
Thank you, everyone. I kind of want to move on from what you were just saying about the, these festivals. I have a sense that perhaps they were locally organized. I don't know if they were through municipal authorities or if it was kind of a civic movement, which leads me to the kind of broader question of what has the Ukrainian government done in protecting its own book market before. Halyna, you mentioned something about quantifiable decrees and quality of work. And what will the government need to do once Ukraine is victorious and the war ends to support the publishers? So maybe we'll start with Halyna this time.
It is a really broad question because, well, we hopefully it will happen very soon. But of course, we must live and see our victory. I think the best that could be done for Ukrainian publishers is something that Ukrainian Book Institute has been doing for a few years now. It's been institutional grants and funding for specific projects. And I also need to mention another institution, Ukrainian Cultural Foundation, who is also supporting. Those are both governmental institutions who are supporting specific projects, and many of them were projects in literature. And I think it will be a good start for small publishers as well. So to put it shortly, I guess specific project support and small publishing houses support. And also I think that after the war, and we can see those trends now, there is a very high demand for books about who we are, books about our history, and what is it to be Ukrainian. And I think those projects will need to be supported in the first place, because this is something that we will need to, and that the world would need to know from us.
Iryna, would you like to add anything about, please?
I would like to add, thank you. So Halyna and Yulia raised really important topic about obstacles and all of these barriers and challenges which Ukrainian publishers were like, it was hard for them to come over. But at the same time, I want to say that the main obstacle was Russian publishing and Russia as a state for Ukrainian book market. And it always was something that kept Ukrainian publishing market away from even faster development, even despite it was really fast if we will compare to other countries, because we had really lack of time for everything. Every time we had some flourishing in some industry, some crisis could happen, some other problems could appear. So I think that Ukrainian government, coming back to your question, I think that one of really good things that Ukrainian government did to help Ukrainian publishing market was the limitation of Russian import to Ukraine, because it was in 2017 when we had like 9 months of total ban of Russian books in Ukraine, and it gave only 9 months. Can you imagine? And this period gave an opportunity to the Ukrainian publishers to, for some, to even to double their catalogs, especially in nonfiction literature, especially in the segments where Russian books were taking the niche of the books that were mostly produced by Russian publishers in Ukraine. And it gives a boost for Ukrainian publishers to develop their business. After that, this ban changed to the limitation of Russian import. It was just time of uncertainty, and I want to make emphasis on this, that it wasn't censorship, it was the protection of the Ukrainian market, because after this, only propaganda books by Russian publishers were cancelled, were banned, and were limited. That's it. And there were really plenty of these books. We made a little research with Chytomo team, and we published the material, the article, but we took 50 Russian books, just the names and the covers, where they making fun of Ukrainian coat of arms, Ukrainian flag. And it was a big discussion. It was exactly at the time when the biggest Russian publishing house, Exmo, was claiming that stop talking about censorship, stop talking about banning of Russian culture and Russian publishers. We are fighting for peace. We don't want to have war. But then we just made these titles. We collected the titles by Exmo Publishing House too. And I truly believe that the publishing house that produced such kind of books with the name The End of Ukrainian Project, and claiming that it's just a nonfiction, we didn't mean anything about that. I think it's really part of Russian propaganda, and I think that here is the sphere that where our government should protect the market from this. Another thing is very important, that it's really hard to regulate it by the government. It's a sector of selling rights, and it's a sector where only business ethics and making partners can help. Because before, it was really complicated for some of Ukrainian publishers to produce translations of the world's best-selling titles, because, for instance, Russia could buy the rights for New York Times bestseller and bring it to Ukrainian market in Russian language before the Ukrainian publishing will print this title, or together with Ukrainian publishing house. It means that competition on our market before was really not fair. It was not healthy competition between two businesses, two markets. That's why I think that government should really think carefully where it should intrude and where the market will regulate by itself. For now, of course, nobody is, okay, not nobody, but most part of the market, most bookstores, most part of bookstores, they are not selling Russian books, because it's kind of bad for your reputation, bad for your image. But there is also very important things that the Ukrainian government could do. Everything is more about budgets, because Ukrainian publishing sector needs support, especially translations, especially education maybe of the translators, residences for translators from Ukrainian to other world's languages. And there are really many steps that were done, starting from Drahoman Prize and the translation support program curated by Olena Odenoka at the Ukrainian Book Institute and started by Bogdana Nebarak. So I think these projects are really helpful, and this is something that Ukrainian government can show to the world, that we are supporting our cultural, our culture, Ukrainian content and Ukrainian literature. And the last point, I think that now it's really important to update Ukrainian laws to the standards of European countries, US, and just Northern America, just to help Ukrainian publishers to make deals with foreign partners in terms of payments, in terms of making business, and all of these things. It's really time-consuming process. It's long, but it's a long-term perspective that we should think about.
Thank you, Halyna and Yulia, I'm gonna just switch slightly track and let you,
Sure.
and then you can, bring in other comments related to the earlier question. But this kind of relates to, where we are right now in Ukraine in terms of publishing. The statistics that I saw from spring were sobering. In that the majority of publishers have suffered severe losses. Askud Menichuk, who's with us on this webinar, mentioned, 3,000 publishers and book trade, those in the book trades who are out of work, bookstores and warehouses that are destroyed. We also have to think about how publishing teams are distributed. Some may still be in Ukraine, some may be in Europe, some may be elsewhere in the world. Some are being paid, some are not. There's the backlog of manuscripts that were accepted for publication. What's happening with those? Are new proposals and manuscripts still being received and accepted, by editorial teams? So perhaps you could start us with how in the world can, because we don't know how long this war is going to last. We hope it will end very soon, but if it goes on a year, 2, 3, publishing, is incredibly important part of the fight as well, of getting voices heard. So maybe you can kind of start there for us.
I can start. I can say that yes, there are a lot of difficulties. So there are really crucial losses. There are companies who are suffering a lot, especially Kharkiv, who was the and who is until now the a capital for the printing, yes, from in Ukraine. So they are suffering a lot with the everyday bombing and air attacks and everything. And a lot of publishers from Ukraine, yes, they were either evacuated or people were spread it in Ukraine or abroad, and the losses of the warehouses and everything. But the main idea is that despite difficulties, a lot of publishers are still trying to do their best to do their job. And it's ridiculous that Vivat Publishing, for example, being in Kharkiv, they are switching to the webinars and doing their job and taking part in the programs, international one, from the bomb shelters. They are working in the, in the shelters or in the corridors in the underground. So I mean, the resilience of the sector is in the players and in the professionals, in the experts, in the people. And the publishing people are, it seems to me, even more resilient than other industries, because their life was not so easy even before. I mean, they were struggling over propaganda from Russia. They were struggling for this with the the situation when they cannot buy rights for the book because the rights were bought for the region by somebody from the Russian publishing industry, and there were a lot of problems. I mean, and people used to solve them. People used not to rely on the help only. People use, especially independent small publishers, and they became not so small during the last years. Or everyday work was hard, but it was fruitful. So these people, they used to work in the circumstances of uncertainty, in the circumstances of COVID, something, no fairs, bookshops are closed and everything, but they are trying to do their best and doing their work and job. Even now, even in few first months, they were not just sitting and evacuating their families. They were trying to evacuate books. They were looking for the new paths for their books to their readers, for example, to Europe, with their, to be with the refugees or something. They were looking for the new opportunities to go with the printing, for example, abroad, and so on and so on. A lot of new schemes and a lot of new practices were developed personally by publishers. So they were not just sitting and waiting for the help. And this, it seems to me, is the source of our, victory in future, because people are not relying only for somebody who will come to help them. So if you will ask me, I will say that the best help for the publishing industry in Ukraine is doing business with them. For everybody from outside Ukraine, for everybody abroad, if you can buy Ukrainian books, please buy them. If you can buy rights for Ukrainian books and translate the Ukrainian texts in your local language, please do this. If you can apply for the grant in your local country or some other international partner together with the Ukrainian publisher, being their partner, please do this, and so on and so on. Look for the schemes for doing business with them, not just, giving them some money. It will help a bit. It will probably help a lot for this very small period of time, but it's not what they are looking for. And it's not that they are waiting for. They are looking for the new opportunities. Even now, in the situation of, tremendous stress, people are looking for the opportunities. We have a great project in the Book Arsenal Festival, which is called Ukrainian Literature Writes On. We were doing this project together with Chytomo, being our international informational partner, together with the help of European Bank of Reconstruction and Development in the first year, supporting the export of Ukrainian industries, and after that supporting with the House of Europe program from the European Union. This was the program devoted and developed in order to develop the expertise of our publishers in selling rights and exporting the product, their product. This year we are thinking of export in the wider sense than just selling rights. We are thinking about exporting physical books, doing it legally, transparency, effectively, looking for the new partners and selling physical books in their places where we have the Ukrainian audience, Ukrainian refugees, and there are a lot of such countries in the world. To tell the truth, we are, they need the expertise in the customs relations, in legacy, in a lot of new things. They are studying a lot, trying to do new businesses, new business, to use the new business opportunities. We were thinking about also selling rights, of course, selling, making new partnerships. For example, looking for the Ukrainian illustrators for the book projects in other countries, looking for Ukrainian designers being the part of the team of the international publishing houses, and so on and so on. Everything is, working for their survival and for their success in future. And I guess that all these cooperations which we are building now, they will last long period of time, because they will be, examined with the so big difficulties, and they will be, growing from such complicated situations that these partners will be really these partnerships will be really very, very strong. I will put also in the chat the link to this program, because which I was mentioning, because this program now, after 3 years, is the like a catalog of the most active, the core of the Ukrainian publishing industry, oriented to export rights, to sell rights for their books. They have updated the catalogs. We have the very really fresh actual catalogs of 2022 now, developed especially for the international markets, for the international fairs. Will be updated once more on the eve of Frankfurt Book Fair in autumn. So I mean, this project gives us now the overview of the Ukrainian market, because we have there the videos in English of different books which are worth to translate, which are giving the idea what the Ukrainian market is for Ukraine, for the international partner prospect in future. We have all the contacts and the catalogs of these mostly active export oriented publishers there, so it can be used by the instrument. We are welcoming everybody who can look for the information, having the idea how to use it and how to make partnership, how to make business together with Ukrainians.
Thank you, and I'll let Iryna and Halyna also speak to this, but I want to piggyback a bit from what some of our participants are also talking about partnerships, and I see that there is a close work with the Polish Book Institute and Ukrainian specialists who have left their homes and jobs and working
yes, the Polish Book Institute, they have reacted in the very first few weeks after the full-scale invasion started. I had plenty of chats, and I guess my colleagues also can say this, asking that, look, what can we do? How can we help? Please direct us. Whom can we ask? If you can help us with the people, with the advices. I mean, they were really very active, very supportive. I'm, happy to have such friends.
And I also see that Askod Menichuk mentions working with the Ukrainian Association of Publishers and Booksellers. There is also a question about cooperation, and perhaps Halyna or Iryna might want to speak to this with the other, maybe before the war with Central Asia, Belarus, the Baltics. Whether there's any kind of forms of cooperations yet, maybe, Lithuania and mutual learning between publishing professionals, or if that's something worth looking into. But so if Halyna and Iryna want to join in. Iryna, please.
Start. So I think that the main sphere of our collaboration before, it was really for many publishers trying their first steps in selling rights, because before 2013, I would say, Ukraine was more buying foreign licenses for the books than trying to sell it, because the process was really really long, and the prospect of financial reward was quite not so big, let's say. But at the same time, publishers understood that this process is quite important, and many of Ukrainian publishers started to work with many other publishers from abroad, with literary agencies and festivals. I think one of the most important points in the development of the Ukrainian publishing market was when Book Arsenal, together with other grassroots initiatives, started to present Ukrainian publishing market all over, like during Frankfurt Book Fair. then with establishing of Ukrainian government agencies, this process was passed to the government. But I think, as Yulia has mentioned, that really big initiative was taken by the Ukrainian publishers, activists, volunteers, publishing professionals to start to move in some kind of direction of like international direction. It was really important for the Ukrainian book market, and now we can see how much important that connections, how much important it's now, because this connection that we started to build, because it's not one day step that you can succeed in. It's just the relations that are building over the years. And now we can see that Ukrainian publishers have more and more connections, more and more rights were sold. And I know that Ukrainian Book Institute is tracking the number of rights that were sold to the other countries, the number of translations that were made in other countries. And I know that this number is increasing from year to year. I hope this year this monitoring will be also an important part of research to see how much were affected this interest, because I hear from the publishers with our little research that we are making with the Chytomo team. Publishers are mentioning that the interest for buying rights from Ukrainian publishers really rising. And I think it's something that we can't lose. We need to keep giving this quality content. We need to keep our authors appear internationally, physically and online, of course. And such kind of projects as literature projects with a Ukrainian book arsenal, like Rights On, it's about exporting the literature product, is really important, because now we need to think more about exporting licenses, exporting physical books, and maybe even co-productions, because of course 74, I think, % of Ukrainian publishers told that they are kind of back to the market. They are trying to work, but we should understand what kind of work it is. It's really work with the books. They have like really lack of distributors to sell, to share these books with people who are now maybe not in Ukraine, who maybe faced some economical problems and they can't afford this book now. So it's a crucial point to have the connections with foreign partners to help Ukrainian publishers in their projects. And I would also add that it's not even just help for Ukrainian publishers, because the content they are producing is really quality content. Ukrainian publishers, Ukrainian illustrators, Ukrainian authors, they are really the winners of international contests. They are starring during the international festivals. It is something that is really interesting for the foreign audience, foreign readers, and I'm sure that this cooperation could have a win-win result for everyone. Halyna, maybe you have something to add in terms of cooperation with international partners.
Yes, I would like to refer to what Iryna and Yulia said, and also to what has been mentioned in the Q&A section about anti-colonial efforts, and book being a very important tool of us standing against imperialistic occupation on informational level. So I think that what we see now and what we can offer to ourselves and to the world, it is culture, and it is on all levels that we are able. We should promote our content, Ukrainian content, and like Iryna said, it is a very good quality stories and a very good quality illustrations, and we need to concentrate on this on international level, of course, as cooperation, and also on Ukrainian level, because we need to deoccupy ourselves on the informational scale. And what also Iryna mentioned previously about this Russian books has been banned years ago. It frees the space for Ukrainian content, and whatever free space we have, if it's not filled in by Ukrainian stories, it might be filled in by Russian content. So we have to be very aware of that. And also, if I may continue this to a human level, this is a challenge for publishers and publishing professionals, not only on infrastructure level, but it is very difficult to keep up when you are having the war on the background, and when you have to fear for your own safety, when families are being divided because women and children are the most prominent part of Ukrainian citizens who had to move abroad, and they have to cooperate and work. And from what I hear from colleagues and people in publishing, it is very difficult to concentrate on work, to concentrate on editing, for instance, even to concentrate on reading. So I think it's also something that we need to be together and help each other on a psychological level. And I think this is something that we need to concentrate on. And that's why all this support that we have from foreign authorities and foreign publishing professionals, it's very inspiring. And I can see that yes, Polish Book Institute was probably one of the first to join our support. When the war started, I was in Poland, and I could see the interest from Polish people, from Polish librarians. They actually asked to tell them information, and I had workshops for Polish librarians to help them to work with children specifically, because those were the most vulnerable part of refugees. So of course it is many things that we need to keep in mind, because we don't know how and when publishing families could be united again. So we need to sort of work remembering these challenges. And of course, the price of the effort is rising, but also the price of the books is rising, because now we mentioned earlier that, for instance, Kharkiv and Kiev, who also suffered at the beginning of the war, those are printing hubs of Ukraine, and taking that into account, and also taking that prices for paper have been rising for years now in Europe. It is very difficult now to print a book in Ukraine. It is still less expensive than to print it abroad, for instance, in Poland, but still it's 230% more the cost of the book. So we will see how it will be developing, and how possible it will be for people to publish and for people to buy it. So more challenges to come.
Yeah, and I can speak from the library perspective that it's heartbreaking how few parcels we get from Ukraine of books, and the risks that people need to take to get books to us in North America, and so I see that we're almost for an hour, and I hope to keep you maybe for another 15 minutes. So I'm going to try to fold in some questions all into big ones. I know that Yulia, you mentioned among many things that we can do to help, one of them was to buy books, and I have a colleague from the University of North Carolina who's also a librarian of Slavic studies, Kirill Topigo, who is wondering whether buying books is at all helpful when it's done by us here in North America, especially, you know, considering kind of anti-colonialism. Is it extractive of your culture that we have the books? You know, what does the money get, you know, to the authors, the publishers, because often we get books through intermediaries from agents who may be getting them for cheap and then selling them for a lot to recoup their costs. So partly is, does that really help? I know that there's a few comments in the Q&A about financial help, and it sounded like the best initiatives were kind of the cooperative agreements, and also to think about book publishing is happening in Ukraine. This is not like World War II where the publishing had to kind of move to the, you know, refugee centers. So we're not maybe talking about a different scenario, but maybe not, you know, maybe that's also something to consider is that. I also wanted to think about format, because getting physical books out of Ukraine is difficult because of the costs of printing. And you know, transporting it, you know, across country and battlefronts. I'm fond of print book. I'm not a big fan of ebooks, but I feel like we can't leave that question out of this discussion. So what about formats? Does buying books really help? And what, you know, concrete things that our listeners here can do?
Maybe I can start. Okay. So now I'm currently in Canada, and I really feel the pain of logistics, which is really complicated if we are talking about printing book. And I think for now, for the Ukrainian publishers, it's really important to sell a printed book. It's still a big issue because money-wise, and of course, if we're talking about children's literature, it's also important to have this physical book, especially if you're far away from your home and you want to be in touch with like narratives and Ukrainian content. But at the same time, I think that Ukrainian publishers should maybe work really closely with distributors, and it's some experience that maybe we are lacking because in Ukraine distribution system, as we already were discussing, it's not so developed, and the culture of working through the distributor is not as much popular. So it's something to learn, and we need to convince distributors to distribute books in Ukrainian. Some of publishers, they already succeeded with books in English. We have a few publishers who are producing content in English, which is good, I think. But at the same time, I'm in Montreal, and we have the big library, National Library, where they have different departments of with the literature in different languages. And I can find there the Russian bookshelf. It's like a few I would say like few rows of Russian books, and there is 0 books in Ukrainian. And this is the big work to do. So what Ukrainians can do. They could just go and ask about the availability of books in Ukrainian. It will also help, I truly believe. Yes, it's not the main channel of distribution to distribute it to the libraries. We totally understand that, but it's still important in terms of presenting Ukrainian culture in the department of Slavic literature. I think it's a shame that some libraries can present only Russian books without Ukrainians, and it's horrible to see which kind of authors they are presenting, even from the lists that are banned in Ukraine as propaganda books. It's something that we should work on. The other thing, I truly believe that co-production is also a way out. I think that printing books abroad, yes, I know that it's quite expensive, but the revenue of selling the book could also be shared between two publishing houses or two companies from Ukraine and from abroad. And this is something to discover. Maybe this type of partnership is not so popular for foreign publishers, and maybe it's more complicated. But if we're talking about physical book, maybe this is the case. And last but not the least, of course, ebook and audiobook. I think that now everyone can see that this segment is rising. It's been rising for over the last 5 years, I think, really extremely in other countries. And I heard that some markets could increase the number of titles and the number of purchases in 1 year in 50%, which is really good. It was about audiobooks. What I can see right now, the demand of e-content is really high. And I've got the data from Jacyk Publishing and Jacyk as a marketplace. So they sold up to the beginning of summer, from the 24th of February, they sold almost 50,000 of ebooks, which is really not bad. And I think that now they have more, but unfortunately I have no data up to this date. I know also that people are still buying, even despite of like maybe the economical situation had changed. People are buying audiobooks in a bookstore, which is really good quality audiobooks. And maybe they are more expensive than ebook, but it's really good product. Also, I think that such publishing house as Laboratoria, it's Anton Martinov's startup. They also launched Librarius platform, where you can download, not download, but read in a closed format from the application Librarius, the books by Ukrainian publishers. So it's also quite well done. And all of these people, they're saying that their sales didn't decrease. They goes on the up. Of course, the income they're making with it is still not as good as we wanted. But now I think first step was pandemic. Now it's war, and everything makes us go in the direction of digital content. Despite pandemic didn't cause the effect we were expecting. So we conducted the research in the Ukrainian Book Institute. We were thinking that maybe pandemic made a good effect on readership. Maybe we have more people who started to read. But unfortunately, our results were not positive. Mostly it showed that people didn't read more during pandemic. And we had more losses during 2020 than positive things. But now I think it's something that it's an impact that makes Ukrainian publishers more prepared for other challenges that are unfortunate for us.
Yeah, and I just want to, on the ebooks, is somehow to communicate that aside from one use kind of readers, these platforms have to be amenable for large libraries to buy licenses, so for university students, that would allow, so that's something to consider, and it's probably also perhaps profitable in a much bigger way. But I don't know if Halyna or Yulia wanted to comment on the kind of challenges of bookselling and
Well, I think it's also a challenge of getting to readers, because not everyone, for instance, is very fond of ebook or audiobook format. And I think it's also a change of reading practices that is tremendously difficult to achieve sometimes. But of course, during pandemic and during when the full-scale war started, it was a change, sort of a drift of many publishers into the ebook format. And I think it's a solution in many cases. It's a solution for people who are unwilling to travel without their book collection, because we book people are very connected to this, but of course it may help. If I may address another book industry part, which are textbooks, because ebooks are being said as a solution, were portrayed as a solution of for textbooks for children, but still it's not an option for many, specifically in primary schools. So it is a difficult question, and as of now, Ukrainian government transferred the money that were supposed to go on printing textbooks for 5th and 9th grades. They have been transferred for the army, for the war purposes. And as of now, activists are looking for possibilities to change this, to find funding. So at least from the 1st of September, Ukrainian schools will get at least one subject printed, because when we speak of ebook versions of textbooks, it's usually a lack of quality, because it's not a proper ebook which is interactive and working as an electronic book. It's usually just a PDF version of a textbook, which lacks all its usability. And of course, that's something that should be also addressed by publishers, but in nearest future, I hope that something will be done about it. And of course, it could raise the question of availability of gadgets for all children. Not always that's the case.
Not to mention access to power during
Yes,
war as well. So yeah. So maybe 5 minutes. I don't want to end on this note, because I had a question about boycotting of Russian publishers, and those 50 books that propaganda books, they're very well represented in North American libraries. Sadly, we have, I think, 3 or 4 of the titles from the list here that somehow snuck their way in, but I was able to stop the flow. But I don't want to end on that note. Halyna, you mentioned about psychological support. So we've talked about financial support, about buying books, about cooperative agreements, but I wonder what that and we know that there are writers and publishers who are serving in the military who may have already lost their lives. And so what might that look like? What kinds of forums would be helpful to reach and show this kind of support? Yulia, maybe you want to start.
Yes, a lot of book industry people are influenced by in different, very different ways by this situation, and yes, unfortunately, we have lost, and there are publishing houses in which the owners or the chief editors are in the army, so it means that it influences the whole work of the publishing house. I'm not an expert in the psychology, but I think that for these people, for all of us, help, the sign and the visibility of Ukraine and the topic of Ukraine and the topic of war in Ukraine, and the visibility of Ukrainian authors and the Ukrainian voices given to us in different international levels is really working. I mean, we have cases when some of our book industry experts are switching from the frontier, like they have the computer and they are via internet are switching to some panel discussions like this from the frontier, like in the middle between the battles. There are a lot of cases when people are switching from the shelters, and they are doing it this not in order to to show that they are brave or crazy enough. They are doing it because they have a strong belief that this is important. The giving the voice to Ukrainians is important. And from here comes this question of boycott of Russia and everything. We are not, appealing to cancel the culture like the total culture, but we are applying to stop giving voices to Russians and stop the situation when you have the shelves of Russian books and have no Ukrainian authors. I don't know. Do you know a lot of if we will start to ask ourselves why it happens? Probably it will be the answer because it was too aggressive. It was too propaganda more than culture. It was not the real culture. It was the culture as a weapon, and so on and so on. I mean, the answer is really on the surface. So giving the voice to Ukrainians now, it's not only the matter of helping or supporting Ukraine. It's a matter of balance. It's a matter of going back to the things how it might be, that there are great authors in the literature in the country which is in the center of Europe. They're one of the biggest countries in Europe, and there are no shelves with Ukrainian books in the libraries. It's nonsense. So I mean, to all these people, this is really very important. The sense of their job is not a profit, as the matter of fact is in major reasons. It's this significant issue. So psychological or financial or any other help, anything which will help to make Ukrainian literature and Ukrainian Book Institute more visible on very different locations and very different events internationally. This is what we need exactly. And actually, this is, it seems to me, what the world needs.
I just want to totally agree with Yulia, because I think all of us, all of the publishers, all of the authors, we were trying to develop. We were trying to develop the market. We were trying to fight in our own way with the help of culture, with the help of being visible. And I know about one case with Tamara Horikha-Zernya. She's a volunteer and she's a writer. She wrote her novel Daughter, which was translated already into Polish and into English. And I know that the publisher from Canada, Mosaic Press, Howard Astor. He was writing to her just when the war had started, and he was saying, "We need your novel now, because that's like the last point when we need it. People should know this story." And Tamara was on the front line. She was just doing things to protect her country, not only with books, but with her deeds. And she was managing this situation with making a deal during this crazy time. And now the book is, the license is in the hand of Canadian publisher. So I think it's incredible capacity of Ukrainians, incredible resilience, as we also had mentioned, of Ukrainian authors, publishers, just publishing experts, festival makers, everyone who is connected to the field of literature and publishing, to fight for being visible, for having the right to introduce the Ukrainian culture ourselves and what is happening, to show the truth, and giving a voice and giving the audience, the access audience, is the best things that our international partners could do, I suppose.
Yes, and I can see that there is a question from Askold Melnichuk.
About textbooks,
yes,
and you were speaking.
Textbooks. So the question says, we were told that there would be a severe shortage of textbooks for grades 5 to 8 to the tune of $40 million. Is that accurate? Well, like I mentioned, at the beginning of the war, all the money that were planned for printing the textbooks, specifically for 5th and 9th grades, because this is how so-called New Ukrainian School, this is the name of the reform that is being conducted since 2018. So the books for those textbooks for those grades were supposed to be printed, and there was 1.3 billion Ukrainian hryvnias and the budget for that. But all this, as of now, went to for army. And what I know is that Ukrainian deputies and activists are working on finding money in the budget to at least print the 4 main subjects, textbooks from for 4 main subjects, like Ukrainian literature, Ukrainian language, mathematics, and history. But it is a difficult process because publishers, specifically it was publishers from Kharkiv publishing house Ranok, which is one of the most prominent Ukrainian textbook and educational literature publishing houses, and they mentioned that it will take at least few months if we start printing them now until they can get to school. So of course it will be a huge delay, but there is also a question of money. Yes, so they are struggling with it. I hope I answered your question, and not to end on this pessimistic note, of course, I would like to agree to what my colleagues have said. And yes, helping people from publishing and from literature world is, of course, yes, giving them platforms, giving them visibility. And referring to this previous question about whether we should buy Ukrainian books, will there be profit? Don't think of it. If you see a Ukrainian book and you watch it, buy it, you will get a good book, and it's that's enough already. And people are really inspiring. Like Yulia mentioned, people who are logging in from Frontier and joining international events, or there are people who are opening bookstores in Ukraine. Vivat Publishing House is opening a new bookstore in Kyiv right now. And there are a few more initiatives like that. So we are stubborn, inspiring, and I hope that it will be enough for Ukrainian book industry to prevail.
Thank you so much, and I'm glad you ended on that kind of positive note. It's really remarkable. Halyna Lystvak, Iryna Baturevych, Yulia Kozlovets, I'm so grateful for your participation, your expertise, and your passion. We do buy Ukrainian books here. We want more Ukrainian books. So thank you so much. And I'm sorry to any participants if we didn't get to your question, but we could be here for hours. So maybe we'll do another cultural kind of event in the fall. So wishing you all well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the organizers. It was a pleasure to be the part. Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye.
giving the voices.
Thank you
Okay.
for having us.
Okay.